I'm Lauren Whitaker, 28 years old, and last spring my younger brother smashed my laptop with one brutal slam and a smile on his face. 18 months of research code and writing, all gone in seconds. I stood in the kitchen holding what was left, but my parents just laughed. My mother called me dramatic. My father said maybe I wasn't meant to graduate. They didn't know it yet, but that moment would change everything. Before I tell you how that moment became the beginning of something much bigger, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and if you've ever had to rebuild from nothing, go ahead and tap that like and subscribe button. I grew up in a modest 2-story house outside Grand Rapids, Michigan. My dad worked maintenance at the local airport, and my mom did shifts at a nursing home when she could. We didn't have much, but we were raised to be polite, never make a fuss, and stay out of the way. My parents valued hard work in a general sense, but they didn't always understand the kind that didn't come with a uniform or a punch clock. I was the quiet one, always in the corner with a book or some project that no one really asked about. My younger brother Matt was the opposite, loud, confident, and good at making people laugh. He played football through parties and dropped out of community college without much ceremony. Our parents still called him our big personality and told stories about his game-winning touchdown from high school like it had just happened last week. When I got a scholarship to the University of Michigan for computer science, they said they were proud, but they couldn't make it to orientation. Matt had a weekend tournament. At my college graduation, they came late and left early to drive Matt to a barbecue. By the time I entered my master's program in computational data systems, I had stopped expecting much. Still, I hoped they'd come around. My research was focused on predictive algorithms for early illness detection in patient health records. It was dense technical work, but it had the potential to help doctors catch serious conditions before symptoms even showed. My advisor, Dr. Evelyn Chang, believed in it from the start. She said it could change how hospitals screen for heart disease. She told me this could be the thing that opens every door for you. I came home for spring break to finish the final revisions. My deadline was a week away, and I just needed quiet a few solid days to tighten everything before submission. My parents said it was fine that Matt wouldn't be around during the day, so I brought my files, my notes, my laptop, and set up in my childhood bedroom, the same room that still had old award ribbons pinned to the corkboard and equations scribbled on the wall in faded ink. On day 3, I was deep into optimizing a critical section of the code when the front door slammed and Matt's voice echoed through the house. I thought he'd be working. Instead, he came in with 2 friends already drinking before noon. I heard the music start up the TV at full blast, their voices shaking the ceiling. I went downstairs, asked them to keep it down. Matt barely looked at me. He just laughed and said, "It's spring break, go outside." I explained again that this wasn't homework. This was my master's thesis. I had a deadline, a real one. He shrugged, made a joke about how I'd probably be working on this until retirement anyway, and turned the volume up. When I asked our parents to help, they waved me off. "It's just noise," my mom said. Matt hardly ever has his friends over. "Can't you be flexible?" That night I stayed up late trying to finish what I could. Headphones in, door closed, fingers on the keyboard. But the music never stopped. The walls kept shaking. And Matt wasn't done yet. I had no way of knowing that by the next evening, my thesis wouldn't just be in danger. It would be gone. I was just finishing up the most complicated section of my thesis when the bass from downstairs started vibrating through the floorboards. I'd asked for quiet all week. One more night was all I needed. Just a few more hours. I put in my earbuds and tried to ignore it, but I could feel my focus slipping, the numbers blurring. Then my bedroom door swung open. Matt stood there, one hand on the frame, the other holding a can of beer. Jake and Chris were behind him, laughing at something I couldn't hear. The smell of alcohol hit before they said a word. "You're still working?" Matt asked. eyebrows raised like it was the strangest thing he'd seen all day. I saved my file before I answered. "My deadline's next week. I told you that already." Jake stepped inside, grinning. "Man, she's really serious about this school stuff, huh? I just need a few hours," I said, trying to stay calm. "Can you guys hang out somewhere else?" Matt laughed under his breath and walked further in. "You know what your problem is? You never relax." I glanced at the screen, then at him. "This isn't about relaxing. It's about finishing something I've worked on for 1.5 years. He walked behind me too close. I felt him looking over my shoulder, watching the code scroll on my screen. "You actually think this stuff matters?" he asked. What is it, some computer program?" "It's a predictive model for healthcare analysis," I said. "It could help doctors catch heart disease earlier." He tilted his head, mocking. "So you're saving lives now?" I didn't answer. I just clicked back into my document. Matt's voice dropped lower. "You always act like you're better than everyone, but you're just sitting in here alone typing on a laptop. Meanwhile, I've got friends, a job, a life." Jake and Chris shifted behind him. Their grins were starting to fade. I turned in my chair. "You think I like doing this alone? You think it's fun being invisible in your own house?" His expression changed for just a second. Then he glanced at the screen again. "This is the famous Thesis." "Yeah, it is." And then he picked it up. I stood up fast. "Matt, don't." He held it in both hands like it weighed nothing. "Let's see how important it really is. Matt, please." The next moment played out like slow motion. He raised it over his head, and then he slammed it to the floor. The sound was awful, sharp, final. The plastic cracked open and keys scattered across the rug. But it didn't stop there. He brought his boot down on the screen. 1, 2 stomps. The glass shattered the casing, bent in on itself. I dropped to my knees and scooped up what I could. The hard drive was exposed, the hinges broken clean through. "Oh my God," I whispered, holding the pieces in my arms. "What did you do?" Matt stood over me, shrugging. "It's just a computer." Behind him, Jake muttered, "Dude, that's not cool." But Matt didn't back down. "She can buy another one." I pushed past them, laptop clutched to my chest, and ran downstairs. My parents had to see. They had to understand. They were in the kitchen. My mom was arranging snacks on a tray. My dad was pouring drinks. "Mom." "Dad," I said out of breath. "Matt just destroyed my laptop on purpose." I held up the broken shell. The wires dangled from the hinge, the screen half detached. My mother looked at it for a second. "Oh, honey, I'm sure he didn't mean to break it that badly." I blinked. He picked it up. He slammed it down. And then he stomped on it. My dad raised an eyebrow. "Didn't you back up your files?" I did. "But not the last revisions. The last 2 weeks are gone." "Well," he said, turning back to the counter, "maybe you weren't meant to graduate if a single computer setback can stop you." Matt walked into the room just then, leaning against the doorway. "It was an accident," he said smoothly. "She's making it sound worse than it was. You said, 'Who cares about your thesis?' And then you broke it," I said, "right in front of Jake and Chris." My mom waved a hand. "Let's not blow this out of proportion. We'll help you buy a new laptop after break," my dad added. "You should come join the party. It might help you clear your head." I stared at both of them. They went right back to what they were doing. My mom was slicing cheese. My dad popped the cap off another soda. I turned and walked upstairs, each step heavier than the last. In the hallway bathroom, I locked the door and sank to the floor. I didn't even cry right away. I just sat there holding the wreckage in my lap. The party noises rolled up the staircase, the clinking glasses, the music, the laughter, like nothing had happened. I stayed like that until my legs went numb. Then I pulled out my phone. The only person I could think of was Rachel. We weren't especially close. We'd taken a systems class together in undergrad. She worked at a tech startup now, about 20 minutes away. I called her. "I'm sorry to drop this on you," I said, "but I don't know where else to go." When I told her what happened, she didn't ask if I was overreacting. She didn't suggest maybe I'd done something to provoke it. She said, "Pack a bag. You can crash at my place." I waited until it was loud downstairs again, then moved quickly. I filled a duffel with my clothes charger backup drive and a stack of printed notes. I zipped it closed and stepped around the broken pieces still on the carpet. As I crept past the kitchen, I heard my mother's voice. "Matt feels terrible. But Lauren's always been so sensitive. Remember when she cried over that B+?" My father laughed. "It's just a computer. She'll get over it." I slipped out the back door into the quiet air. The drive to Rachel's place was a blur. When I got there, she was waiting at the door with a blanket in her arms and a soft light on behind her. "I made up the couch," she said. "There's tea in the kitchen. Or wine. Whichever helps." That night, I sent an email to Dr. Chang explaining what had happened. I attached pictures of the laptop. My hands were still shaking as I typed. I didn't know if she'd believe me. I didn't know if any of it could be saved. But I knew one thing for sure. Matt hadn't just broken a machine. He'd broken the last bit of hope I had that my family would ever take me seriously. And starting the next morning, I was going to find out just how much I could rebuild without them. Rachel's apartment was small, but it felt like the safest place in the world that night. She handed me a cup of tea, wrapped me in a spare blanket, and didn't ask questions I couldn't answer yet. I sat on her couch with the broken laptop beside me in a plastic grocery bag. Even though I was exhausted, I didn't fall asleep for hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Matt's face when he lifted my laptop off the desk and the sound it made when it hit the floor. The next morning, I woke early, still fully dressed from the night before. Rachel had already left for work, but she'd scribbled a note on the counter. "You've got this. Don't give up now." Underneath it, she'd left her tablet so I could email Dr. Chang. It took a few tries before I could write what had happened. I kept second-guessing how it sounded too emotional, too detailed, not detailed enough. I ended up attaching pictures of the destroyed laptop just so she'd know I wasn't exaggerating. Dr. Chang replied an hour later, "Lauren, come to my office at 9 a.m. We're going to get through this. Don't lose hope." I held the tablet in my lap for a long time before moving. After everything the night before, that simple message was enough to get me up. I showered, pulled my hair back, and left for campus with my notebook and external hard drive in my backpack. My legs felt heavy walking across the parking lot, but I made it. Dr. Chang's office smelled faintly of mint tea and books. Her desk was stacked with folders and journals, just like always. But when she looked up and saw me standing there, she pushed everything aside. "Come in," she said gently. "Sit down." I set the plastic bag on her desk. She opened it and lifted the laptop out carefully, as if it might still have something useful left in it. The screen was shattered in two places, the corner bent in like it had been hit with a hammer. "This wasn't an accident," she said. I nodded. "He did it on purpose. My parents didn't care." She leaned back in her chair. "This is serious, Lauren, and you're not overreacting." Her voice didn't rise, didn't rush. She just said it plainly like it was a fact. And hearing it like that helped me breathe again. She picked up her phone and called Raj, the IT specialist from the department. Within the hour, he arrived with tools and a quiet focus. He removed the hard drive from the broken machine and examined it with a small flashlight, tilting it under the overhead lamp. "I'll do everything I can," he told us. "But this one's taken a beating." While he worked, Dr. Chang and I sat down with a legal pad and started listing everything I'd lost. The updated algorithm, the new test results, the conclusion section I'd rewritten just days earlier. Whatever we can't recover, she said we rebuild, one section at a time. She handed me a white access badge. "This gives you full entry to the advanced computing lab, 24/7. You'll have the best workstations we've got." I nodded, but the weight of it all sat heavy in my chest. "What if I can't finish?" I asked quietly. "Then we file for an emergency extension. But first, let's see what we can save." By late afternoon, Raj returned with a report. About 80% of the files were recoverable. The rest, mostly the final revisions, were corrupted beyond repair. "It's better than I thought," I said, trying to believe it. Dr. Chang agreed. "It gives us something to work with. Let's map out a schedule." We outlined 6 straight days of 16-hour sessions. I'd sleep in the lab's break room shower at the campus gym and eat whatever I could grab quickly. Rachel dropped off a change of clothes and some groceries that evening, and I moved into the lab full-time. For 3 days, I barely checked my phone. When I finally did, there were several messages from my mother. "Where did you go? This is rude. Matt feels terrible. Can't you two just talk it out? Don't turn this into a family drama." I didn't answer any of them. On the 4th day, someone knocked on the lab door around lunchtime. It was a man I didn't recognize at first, tall, dark-rimmed glasses, holding a paper bag. "Hi, I'm Marcus," he said, "Rachel's cousin." He worked at a cybersecurity firm downtown. When Rachel told him what happened, he'd offered to stop by and see if he could help. He stayed for an hour reviewing my code and pointing out a few time-saving tricks for rebuilding the optimization structure. Before he left, he handed me his card. "When you're done with this," he said, "give me a call. We're hiring." That night, 3 students from my seminar class showed up with extra chargers, coffee, and a pack of printer paper. They had heard through the department grapevine what happened and offered to help. One of them, Eliza, was the best coder in our year. "We've all had deadline disaster," she said, "just not this dramatic." They stayed with me past midnight, helping troubleshoot sections of the algorithm and cross-check older notes with my new drafts. It was the first time in days I didn't feel completely alone. By the 5th morning, I had most of the algorithm rewritten from scratch. The structure was tighter, the logic cleaner. Dr. Chang reviewed it line by line and nodded slowly. "This version might actually be stronger than your original." I didn't say much in response, just went right back to work. The conclusion section was still unfinished. I worked through the night to rebuild it, typing in long, silent stretches as the sun came up behind the lab windows. That next morning, I sat back and ran the final tests. The code compiled. The model held. Every output came back clean. I stared at the screen for a long time before moving. Then I saved everything twice, backed it up to 3 places, and emailed a copy to Dr. Chang. 1 week after Matt destroyed my laptop, I had a complete thesis. And the moment I clicked submit, I knew what I had to do next, because now that I'd rebuilt what they tried to destroy, I was going to go home and face them. I waited until the end of the weekend to go back. The thesis was submitted. The backup drives were secure. I had my confirmation email saved and printed. Every piece of documentation was in my folder. I parked in the driveway a little before 2. The front yard looked the same: trimmed hedges, the faded welcome mat, the screen door still squeaking when I pulled it open. My mom answered the door. She blinked surprised, then reached out like she expected a hug. "Lauren, thank goodness you're home. We've been so worried." I stepped inside without responding. "I'm just here to pick up the rest of my things." Her face dropped. "Don't be silly. You're staying, aren't you?" "This has gone far enough." I didn't answer. I walked through the hall toward the stairs. The house felt smaller somehow, like everything had shifted. Like I could see the cracks in the paint and the things that had never been fixed. My dad appeared from the living room with a newspaper in hand. "Well, look who decided to show up. I'm only here to get my stuff," I said. "Then I'm leaving." Behind me, my mom called out, "You should talk to Matt before you go. He's been feeling awful. Is he here?" "No, he's working at your uncle's job site." "But he'll be home by dinner. We can sit down as a family and work through this." I kept walking. "That won't be necessary." My bedroom door was still half open. The broken laptop pieces were exactly where I'd left them. No one had moved anything. I stepped inside and took a few pictures, mostly for the case I was filing, but I couldn't help noticing how quiet it was. The same posters from high school still hung on the walls. My award certificates, untouched, lined the bookshelf. I started packing. 2 suitcases, 3 boxes. I worked methodically, folding clothes, stacking books, wrapping cables. From downstairs, I could hear the low sound of voices, my parents talking, then falling silent. I didn't go down. Around 4:30, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Doors slammed. Matt's voice rose up the stairs. "Is that Lauren's car?" "She's back." A minute later, he was at the door to my room, leaning on the same frame he had just over a week ago. "Hey," he said. "Look, I'm sorry. I kept folding clothes. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking. You know how it gets. You destroyed my thesis," I said without looking up. "You weren't just drunk. You were angry, and you did it on purpose." He laughed once short. "Come on. You're not still mad about that." I turned and looked him straight in the eye. "I'm suing you." He blinked. "You're what I've filed a small claims case, and I've submitted a police report." He stared at me like he didn't understand the words. "You're joking." I opened my backpack and handed him a folded document. "You've been served. Court date's in 3 weeks. He didn't take it. "You're really going to do this?" he asked. "To your own brother?" "You did it to yourself." His voice rose. "You think you're so much better than me with your degrees and your little programs?" I zipped the last suitcase. I rebuilt it. The whole thesis. It's already submitted. Footsteps pounded on the stairs. My parents reached the doorway, my mother first. "Lauren," she said breathlessly. "What's going on?" My dad stepped in beside her. "You can't sue your own brother. This is insane." "Actually," I said, setting the paperwork on the bed, "I can." "And I am. You're tearing this family apart over a laptop," my father asked. "It wasn't just a laptop," I said. "It was my future." He came into my room, picked it up, and smashed it. "We'll help you buy a new one," my mother offered. "You said that after spring break," I reminded her. My deadline didn't wait. My dad shook his head. "You've always been dramatic about this school stuff. You cried over a B in 10th grade. "I finished the thesis," I said quietly. "And I did it without any of you." Matt stepped back, arms crossed. "You really want to go to court, fine. Don't expect Dad to help with your tuition." "I've already applied for emergency funding," I said. Dr. Chang made the arrangements. There was a long pause. My mother looked at me like she didn't recognize who I was. "After everything we've done for you," she said softly. I turned toward her. "What exactly have you done?" She blinked. "I paid for college through scholarships. I worked every summer. You never asked about my work. You only cared when Matt had a party or made the team." Matt scoffed. "You act like it's a crime to have fun." "You came into my room to destroy something that mattered to me," I said. "That's not fun. That's malicious. You can't prove I did it on purpose." "Jake saw the whole thing," I said. "He's willing to testify." His expression changed. It was the first time he didn't have something clever to say. I picked up the boxes and headed for the door. No one followed right away. I made it down the stairs, out to the car, loaded everything in the trunk. The air was cooler than I expected for spring. As I reached for the driver's side door, I heard my mother behind me. "Lauren, please, we're your family." I turned one hand still on the door handle. A real family supports each other. A real family doesn't laugh when you're crying. Tears were running down her face, but I didn't move. "We love you. I know you think that. But love without respect isn't enough." She didn't say anything else. She just stood there as I pulled out of the driveway and headed back toward campus. I didn't know then what would happen in court, or whether Matt would actually show up. But I knew this much. Whatever came next, I was finally standing on my own. I drove straight back to campus after leaving the house. No music, no calls, just the hum of the road and a quiet mind. By the time I reached my parking spot behind the lab, the sun was low enough to paint the buildings in soft gold. Inside, the lights were still on. Dr. Chang was in her office jacket draped over her chair, flipping through a binder of student submissions. When she looked up and saw me at the door, she smiled faintly. "You get everything she asked." I nodded, and I served him. She leaned back, hands folded on the desk. "How'd it go?" It was quiet, at first. I hesitated. Then the yelling started. She didn't seem surprised, just waited, letting the space fill itself. I told them I filed a report, small claims, police documentation. My parents said I was tearing the family apart. Dr. Chang nodded once. "And how are you feeling?" "I feel steady," I said. "Tired, but clear." I stayed in the lab that night, not to work, just to rest. I unrolled the cot in the break room again and climbed under the thin blanket. In the stillness, I stared at the ceiling tiles and let my eyes close for the first real sleep in days. The next morning, I got an email from the Student Legal Services office. My court date was officially filed, 3 weeks out. It gave me time to prepare. I made a list of everything I would need: photos of the damage statements from Dr. Chang and Raj, backup logs, time-stamped emails. I organized it in a binder labeled each section, then made copies. On campus, life kept moving. My classmates were returning from spring break. People passed me in the halls with headphones in and coffee cups balanced on textbooks. Nobody knew what had happened, or if they did, they didn't mention it. I moved into a small studio apartment on the edge of campus the following weekend. It was nothing fancy, bare walls, secondhand furniture, but it was mine. Rachel helped me hang a curtain rod and carried in 2 of the boxes from the car. "You really served him?" she asked as we unpacked books into the one narrow shelf by the window. "I did." She raised an eyebrow. "And your parents?" "They didn't stop me." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she nodded. "Good." A few days later, Marcus stopped by the lab again. He brought lunch soup bread and a little carton of chocolate milk. "I heard you submitted," he said, sliding the paper bag across the desk. "Congratulations." "Thanks." He sat down across from me. "We've got an open role at Tech Fusion. It's entry-level, but it's research-oriented. You'd be working with data sets, model tuning, same lane as your thesis." I didn't say anything right away. "If you're interested," he added, "just send over a draft. Doesn't have to be final." I agreed to think about it. The next morning, Dr. Chang pulled me aside after class. She handed me a sealed envelope. "I sent your preliminary thesis draft to Tech Innovate, the firm that reached out before the incident." I opened the letter and scanned the top lines. "We'd like to formally invite you to submit your completed thesis for review." I looked up. "They're still interested," she said. I tucked the envelope carefully into my bag and zipped it closed. The following week was spent preparing for my defense. Dr. Chang ran mock interviews with me. Rachel read through every section twice. Marcus emailed a few technical questions that might come up during committee review. One night I stayed late in the lab with the door propped open. Just past midnight, someone tapped gently on the frame. It was Eliza, one of the students who'd helped me rebuild. "I heard you're close," she said. "Want a second set of eyes on your test outputs?" We sat side by side for almost 2 hours, reviewing line by line. When she left, she handed me a yellow sticky note with a small drawing of a phoenix at the top. "Thought you could use something for your desk." I stuck it next to my monitor. Each day that passed, the stack of documents beside me grew more solid proof of the work, the recovery, the rebuild. At night, I kept checking the court documents. No new filings, no response from Matt or my parents. The deadline to respond passed quietly. No contest was filed. Rachel was the one who told me what that meant. If they don't show, and you've got evidence, you'll win by default. The day of the hearing came fast. I wore a navy dress and flat shoes. I brought 2 binders, printed exhibits, and copies of the police report. My parents showed up. They sat in the back row. Neither of them spoke to me. Matt didn't come. The judge asked a few clarifying questions. I handed over the photographs of the damaged laptop, the statement from Raj confirming intentional damage, screenshots of messages and proof of missed opportunity windows from both companies. 20 minutes later, the judge ruled in my favor. Matt was ordered to pay $3,800 cost of the laptop, the lost work time, and related damages. I walked out of the courtroom alone. My parents didn't follow. That evening, as I finished the final formatting for my thesis defense, I got an email from Tech Innovate. Dr. Chang had sent over the updated version on my behalf. We're impressed by the depth and focus of your work and the resilience you've shown. Our interest in your research remains strong. Please contact us after your defense. I stared at the screen, then closed the lid of my new laptop. I'd bought it with the court settlement. I had 3 days left before I stood in front of the panel, but I already knew what I had to say. The morning of my thesis defense, I woke before my alarm. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of the heater. I sat at the small table near the window with a mug of coffee and flipped through my final note cards. Everything was packed. Laptop printed charts, backup copies. I didn't feel nervous, not in the way I'd expected, just steady, focused. Campus was still half asleep when I arrived. The sun hadn't fully cleared the trees, and the sidewalk was damp from the night's rain. I crossed the courtyard with my bag over one shoulder, the same path I'd walked 100 times before. Only this time, I wasn't just a student defending a project. I was showing up for something I'd rebuilt from the ground up. The committee was already seated when I walked into the conference room. 5 professors, including Dr. Chang. She gave me a small nod as I plugged in my laptop and adjusted the mic. I began with an overview of my research, what led me to the problem, how I designed the algorithm, the data sets I tested. Then I walked them through the core structure, the math, the logic, the layers of predictive modeling. The questions came midway through, some technical, some theoretical. I answered each one carefully, referring to my visuals when I needed to. The deeper we went, the more certain I became. Every word I said, every slide I showed it, had all come from work I'd done twice, once before the destruction, and again after. At the end, the room was still. Then the committee chair leaned forward. "Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. You've presented a strong, well-supported thesis. We're pleased to inform you that your defense has been accepted with distinction." I exhaled, steady but full. After they filed out, Dr. Chang stayed behind. She walked over, arms crossed, and looked at the screen, still showing my final slide. "That was one of the strongest defenses I've seen in years," she said. I nodded once. "Thank you. You didn't just get through it. You improved it." I closed my laptop and packed it away. She reached for her coat. "Come Monday, I'd suggest emailing Tech Innovate. And Marcus, too." That weekend, I stood in line with my fellow graduates. Navy gowns, black shoes, and the weight of the ceremonial hood over my shoulders. When my name was called, I stepped across the stage, held my diploma with both hands, and looked out over the rows of folding chairs. Rachel was in the 3rd row, smiling so wide I could see it from the podium. Marcus sat beside her, a camera in hand. Dr. Chang was near the back with the faculty arms folded, watching quietly. My parents weren't there. Neither was Matt. I didn't look for them. After the ceremony, Rachel wrapped me in a hug. "We should celebrate," she said. "I still have to move out of the lab," I replied. "There's a whole box of folders I left in the break room." Marcus offered to help. We packed everything into the trunk of his car and drove it back to my apartment. He walked up the stairs behind me with the heaviest box balanced on one hip. At the door, he set it down and reached into his coat pocket. "I forgot to give you this," he said. It was a formal offer from Tech Fusion, full-time, healthcare analytics division, salary listed, benefits included. I scanned the first line. It's real. Comes with an office and everything. I leaned against the doorway and let that sink in. 3 days later, I got a check in the mail. $800, court-ordered damages. I deposited it the same afternoon and used part of it to upgrade my laptop. The rest went toward the security deposit on a larger unit across town closer to the Tech Fusion office. A week into the new job, I was settling in, getting used to the morning commute, the building's quiet elevator, the rhythm of meetings and tasks. One afternoon, just before I shut down my screen for the day, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Lauren," she said after a long pause, "we miss you." I didn't answer right away. "Your father and I have been talking. We realize we may have mishandled things." I let the silence carry. "Matt lost his job at your uncle's company," she went on, "and he's having trouble finding new work. The legal record. It's been a problem." I sat back in my chair. "We thought maybe you could talk to him, help him figure things out." I waited. "You've always been so good at organizing things, planning. We thought maybe—" I cut in gently. "I can't fix this for him. But your family. Family means accountability, too." Another pause. "Will we see you again?" "I'm not cutting you out," I said. "But things have to be different. I need to know my work matters, that my boundaries are real." She didn't reply for a long moment. Then finally, "I'm trying to understand." It wasn't an apology, but it was the start of something. And for the first time in my life, that was enough to move forward with limits. I didn't visit right away. Not after that call. I gave it time. I went to work, came home, picked out furniture for the new place. The quiet suited me. The space, the clean slate, everything felt earned. But I didn't avoid them completely. Over the next few months, I saw my parents 3 times, once for Sunday lunch at a diner halfway between us, another for a quick coffee downtown. The third time I met my mom at the garden center, where she liked to walk the aisles and point out which plants she thought she could keep alive. Each time the visits were short. No mention of the court case, no updates about Matt. They never asked me to come back home. At work, things moved quickly. By the end of my second month at Tech Fusion, my algorithm had been selected for a pilot program at 3 regional hospitals. I got to sit in on the rollout meetings, watch the data come in, see my work doing what I built it to do, spotting early signs of cardiovascular issues in patient histories before the symptoms even started. One night after a late shift, I stopped at the grocery store near my apartment. I was standing in line with a basket of soup bread and frozen vegetables when my phone buzzed. It was an email from Jake, Matt's friend, one of the guys who'd been in my room the day it all happened. His message was short. "Hey, I've been thinking about that night for a while. I should have said something. I knew what he did was wrong. I just didn't know how to speak up. But I saw what you did after, and I wanted to say I'm sorry. I hope you're doing well." I reread it twice, then tucked my phone away. I never responded, but I didn't delete it either. Back at the apartment, I microwaved the soup and pulled a blanket over my legs on the couch. The city lights outside glowed soft and steady. That night, I slept without waking once. The next week, I was called into a meeting with the head of development at Tech Fusion. He wanted to go over initial results from the pilot program. The numbers were promising. Doctors were noticing things sooner. Referrals were being made faster. Fewer patients were falling through the cracks. "We're considering moving this into a full deployment," he said, "across the hospital group, and possibly beyond." He glanced at the chart in front of him. "Nice work, Whitaker." Afterward, I called Dr. Chang. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "I wanted you to hear it from me," I said. "They're expanding the program." She didn't say much, just a quiet, proud pause on the other end of the line. The following Sunday, I agreed to have lunch with both of my parents. We met at a booth near the back of a pancake house off the highway. My dad wore a button-down I didn't recognize. My mom brought a photo of a dog she was thinking about adopting. They asked about work. I gave them surface answer safe ones. They didn't mention Matt until the check came. "He's looking," my mom said, folding her napkin, "trying to find a new job." "He's had interviews," my dad added. "But the background check keeps coming up." I nodded and reached for my purse. "We lent him the money," my mother said suddenly, "for the court settlement, just to put it behind us." My dad shifted in his seat. "We didn't want him to start off completely stuck." I set the tip on the table and stood. "Thanks for lunch." Neither of them followed me to the parking lot. That evening I opened a fresh document on my laptop. Just a personal file. No formatting, no deadlines. I titled it Post-Thesis Notes and started typing everything I'd learned during the process of rebuilding my work from scratch. The patterns, the refinements, the questions that still hadn't been solved. I didn't know what it would turn into. Maybe a new proposal, maybe something else entirely, but it was mine. That week, I was asked to speak to a new batch of interns at Tech Fusion students coming up through the same program I'd graduated from. After the session, one of them stopped me in the hallway. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Did you ever have someone close to you just not believe in you?" I thought for a second. Then I nodded. "What did you do?" I adjusted the strap on my bag. I finished anyway. He smiled, said thank you, and walked off toward the elevator. And as I watched the doors close behind him, I realized the past no longer followed me into every room I had outgrown it. A few months later, I stopped by Dr. Chang's office on a quiet Friday afternoon. She wasn't expecting me, but when she saw me at the door, she waved me in like she always had. "Come sit," she said, setting her mug aside. "What's new?" I gave her a quick update on the algorithm's rollout. It had been approved for statewide use in the hospital network. We sat for a while going over the latest test results, what came next, and where I wanted the project to grow. Before I left, she reached across the desk and touched the edge of my notebook. "I hope you're proud of how far you've come." I nodded, and for a moment, neither of us needed to say more. That night, back in my apartment, I unpacked a small box I hadn't touched in almost a year. It held a few saved documents, some printouts, and the cracked remains of my old laptop, what I'd kept after the recovery process. I didn't need it anymore, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Matt and I hadn't spoken since the hearing. He'd found another job eventually, something through a friend, but our paths didn't cross. My parents reached out from time to time, mostly to share small things. A photo of the dog they finally adopted. A card on my birthday with no return address, just both of their names. We weren't close, but we weren't strangers either. I'd drawn a line, and for once it was being respected. I still visited Rachel once a month. We'd meet for dinner or walk around the old bookstore near campus. Marcus came too when work allowed. He'd taken to calling us the recovery crew. One evening, while we were wrapping up a team meeting at Tech Fusion, Marcus asked me something. "Do you ever regret taking him to court?" I thought about it for a moment. "I regret that it had to come to that," I said. "But not that I stood up for myself." He nodded. "You never talked much about what happened." "I didn't need to," I said. "The work speaks for itself." And it did. But more than that, what I built afterward, this life. I live now, it came from knowing I could endure the loss of something that mattered and still keep going. When Matt destroyed that laptop, he thought he was stopping me, maybe even humbling me. But what he actually did was show me how deeply I'd been waiting for my family's approval, and how much I'd given away hoping to earn it. Losing it all helped me see that the people who truly believe in you won't ask you to shrink to stay close. Sometimes the justice we're looking for isn't just in the courtroom. It's in the quiet decision to move forward with your head held high. It's in creating something stronger from what was broken. It's in choosing finally to value yourself, even when others don't. And when you do, you begin to attract the kind of people who see your worth right from the start. That's what made the difference for me. If you've ever had to rebuild from something someone tried to take from you, you're not alone. And if this story reminded you of your own, I'd love to hear it. Feel free to share it in the comments. And if you'd like more stories like this one, you're always welcome to subscribe and stay a while. Thanks for listening to mine.